All right, guys, we are here with Ruben from NGRAVE. Ruben, what's going on, man?
How are you? All good this side.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're able to take the time to speak with us today. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. As long as I can talk about crypto, I'm happy. So let's get this show going, right?
Let's get
All
it
right.
going, man. So before we dive into it, can you just do me a favor and introduce yourself to our audience and give them a little bit about your background?
Sure. My name is Ruben Merre. I'm co-founder and CEO of NGRAVE. NGRAVE is a digital asset security company with a mission to radically improve your security and your ease of use when you are managing your cryptocurrencies. My background, I've been, let's say, sort of a repeat tech entrepreneur in the last 7, 8, well, probably it's almost 10 years by now. So I studied business engineering. It's like an MBA, but it's called MBE because it's like a master's degree in engineering, but you have a lot of courses focusing purely on managing businesses. It's something that doesn't really exist in the US. And after that, I started working as a strategy consultant, and I actually noticed that I could keep studying in parallel. So I just kept studying every year, doing another postgraduate degree. It's like this cookie monster inside of me that just wants to keep eating knowledge. And eventually, yeah, I also started doing entrepreneurship, like really setting up some tech companies and scaling them. And at some point, I fell in love with the promise of what blockchain can actually do. And I also quickly realized that security is like one of the biggest issues that's still not resolved at all today. And that's also why we eventually created NGRAVE, to empower you to really take secure ownership and control of what is yours.
I couldn't agree more with that. Can you just dive in a little bit as far as why you feel blockchain has a promising future and what caused you to love crypto?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me specifically, I'm like this person that really has kind of a feeling inside of me. If something isn't justified, or if I see injustice, it really hits me hard. And so when I start thinking about the use cases of blockchain, let's say if there is a developing country and a tsunami passes by and it wipes away all the land of all these people, and suddenly a dictator stands up and he says, "Hey, I have this." All the land is now mine because your, let's say, your physical certification of this is my land is gone, and he has his centralized database, and he can say, "Hey, as from now on, this is all mine, and there is no way you can actually contradict it." I really love the idea of that blockchain can basically empower all of these people in saying, "Hey, every one of us has actually the same version of the truth, and it's a different version of the truth than you have, Mr. Dictator." And just by having that kind of, let's say, backing of the truth that blockchain can bring, that really got me, well, kind of extremely interested in the technology. So obviously the data like that doesn't go away, but at least you have some grounds to start building your revolution from, let's say. And you can apply that to so many different cases that it's really, really interesting. Like if you think about remittances with a Pakistani father working in the Arab Emirates, and then he can send money to his family, and today it costs him 20% transaction fee. And with Bitcoin, you can basically send the money in real time and you barely pay anything. So all of these use cases of the technology I found really compelling.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's true, right? Like it's so much that there's been so much injustice in the world, whether it's data security or whatever you want to call the different use cases that are out there. But blockchain really does have a promising future to correct some of that stuff. So I love that you have a mission behind it, and that's what kind of like drove you to dive in deeper and actually create a company from it. So kudos to you there. So with that being said, can you talk a little bit more about NGRAVE, what it is exactly, and how it differs from some of the other techs like Nano Ledger?
Yeah, sure. So our start in NGRAVE came about from, well, let's say our own very own experiences. And I think the most crazy experience was the one of our CTO, Xavier. His company lost $10 million or 44,000 Ethereum in the parity hack in 2017.
Shit.
It's one of the biggest hacks known to date. And in the act, instead of just sitting there and staring at the empty smart contract balance, he basically teamed up with some white hat hackers, and they were able to secure the money for 500 other projects. by basically hacking them themselves. So they just took matters in their own hands, and they hacked 500 projects just to make sure that the good hackers had the money and not the bad ones. And we kind of had similar experiences, the three co-founders of us. And in 2018, we came together with just that simple question of which solution would we trust with our very first to our very last Bitcoin? And we couldn't find an answer in the market. So we took on the crazy adventure of doing it ourselves. And now 2 years later and many world-class partnerships further, we actually built this solution. So we, in the very beginning, we said, okay, we need to build the best solution in the world. That means we need to partner up with the best players in their specific fields. And so after 2 months of building our own, let's say, functional prototype, we went to the world-leading research and development institution for nanotechnology. We showed them what we had. We told them about our vision, and they decided to put us in their tech acceleration program, which is like one of the top programs in Europe. And after a couple of months, they approached us themselves and said, like, wow, we actually want to partner up with you guys and build this thing. And so we basically got into a lot of partnerships with really, really strong world-class players to build this thing from scratch and to take a very absolute view and approach to security. So for example, if you would compare it with all of these existing solutions, we said a secure cryptocurrency exchange, it's nice, but it's not security. Or let's say one of these existing hardware wallets, even if they are secure, it's not security. Security has to be this end-to-end approach, this end-to-end vision where you talk about every what if. Like, what if I lose my hardware wallet today? The answer is you have your private key backed up on a piece of paper. And so we said that's completely inadequate as a solution to basically be a backup of all your wealth. And therefore, we created not only a whole new hardware wallet, but also a whole new backup solution. And by that, we also thought about the next what if I lose my backup? And we actually were able to create the first recoverable backup in the industry. And right now we have, as I think the only player, a true end-to-end solution where we start with a hardware wallet that generates your keys offline, that keeps your keys offline at all times, that when the device is lost, you have a backup. This backup is almost indestructible. And if you lose it, you can actually still recover it. And if you pass away tomorrow, which is obviously the most extreme case or scenario, you're actually able to recover it. And all that without any third-party risk. So NGRAVE will never know your key at any point. And I think that really differentiates us from these existing solutions. And also the fact that in every step of the way, we looked at every detail, we left no stone unturned, and we said, okay, if there is still a residual risk for the user, it has to be eliminated. And yeah, I could talk about that for days, but let's say that is a bit of the dough that we use to build this solution.
So not only do you have a backup for your backup, you guys don't have any control of like any of that information. So
no. So to give you an example on how extreme we are, so an existing hardware wallet gives you a key, right? You open it up, you put it on, and it says this is your key, right? It's down somewhere. The issue with that is twofold. First of all, the hardware wallet manufacturer might know what the key is, right? There is a risk. It's a small risk. I don't think they do it, but it's possible. So they could actually have a whole database of all the keys they ever made, and one day they do an exit scam. And the other issue, and that is actually outside of their control, is the fact that these, let's say the private key generators are specialized chips that are certified, and you can look it up. You can find so many articles on the fact that there are backdoors in those chips. So these are certified by certification bodies, and these bodies actually know how to reconstruct keys because they know the process. And so we said, okay, first of all, we have to eliminate the risk of these chips. So what we do is we use the interior chip, and we use one of the best in the industry, but we also include external factors that happen in real time when you are making the key. So your key doesn't only come from the chip, it also comes from your biometrics. So for example, your fingerprint is part of the key generation process. Your ambient light, the light surrounding you at the moment you're making the key, is captured through the camera and is also part of the key generation process. And eventually we also let the user interact in real time with the key so that he knows by the end of the process that even NGRAVE has absolutely no way of still knowing what the key could be, because he basically made it offline in a co-creation process with the device. And for us, it becomes almost impossible to brute force the key he actually made.
Damn. So like you said, you really left no stone unturned there. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Exactly. So even though, let's say, part of our solution is still closed source because we kind of have to, and also because, for example, secure elements, which are very important parts of hardware wallets, they are today closed source. We still try to remove the black box for the user, so that the user still has this knowledge and feeling and that he is the only owner of the key, right? That nobody else even has a single clue for it could be, which is the case, however, or a possible case with the existing solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also like the look of it. It's very sleek. And I also like that you added biometrics into it. It's very unique.
Yeah, exactly. So for us, it was all about cool that this thing is super complex and it can cater for all the cryptography there is. But for the end user, it has to be almost baby simple, right? It has to be so intuitive that he cannot make any mistakes, because if the usability is wrong and he can make mistakes, then the security is already deteriorating. So for us, usability is a part of the security, and usability just has to be, for me, it's super simple, and everything complex is hidden behind indeed that slick touchscreen experience.
Yeah. And I also think that helps with mass adoption of Bitcoin as well, because a lot of these are very complex wallets and it's very hard to exchange in between them. But this kind of makes it very simple, and it kind of takes that whole complexity out of it, which is very nice.
Yeah, so for example, with most of these existing solutions, sometimes you have to, let's say with the ledger, you have to install apps. And for every coin you want, you have to install new apps. And in our case, it's your coins are literally one tap away. So let's say the moment you're making your dashboard, you just swipe and you say, I want Ethereum, I want Tezos, I want something else. You just tap on it and the key will be in your, or the account of that crypto will be in your wallet.
That's so smooth. Nice.
Yeah, Cody, I don't know about you. I'm pretty fired up right now. I think I'm
Yeah,
gonna
me too, man.
order like 3 or 5 of these and start giving them out to some, like my parents and people like that, because Ruben, like you were saying, man, you really need to have that usability nailed down, because if it's more complex where people can make a mistake, like you said, the security is breached right then and there, and that's just holding back mass adoption, because not only is crypto intuitively complicated for most people to understand, but then the idea of storing their private keys and all that stuff, they have no idea what it is. They just want to know that they have a safe solution, that people aren't going to hack and steal their money. So I think you guys hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, and indeed, in the end of the day, for us, it still comes down to that worldwide blockchain adoption and fostering that. And for us, the two big hurdles we are trying to take away right now is indeed security and usability. It has to be easy, it has to be safe. Because if you look at the market, we started in 2018, and by the end of that year, the security even deteriorated with like 2.5 billion stolen in crypto. And last year, it pulverized the record of 2018 with $4.3 billion. So even though blockchain technology is somehow getting better or is evolving, the security issue is actually still getting worse.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's funny because actually right before this interview happened, I got a DM on Twitter where one of my followers was like, hey, should I get a wallet? How should I store my crypto? So this was very timely. Can you talk about a hardware wallet versus offline cold storage versus leaving your keys on an exchange?
Yeah, sure. So everything in the blockchain space comes down to the private key. And the way we actually talk about it is we call it the private key paradox, because the one thing that makes blockchain so secure is actually also its Achilles heel, and it's the cryptography. So the way you can see that is your private key is the access key to your, let's say, your wallet. And if you do not know my private key, you cannot brute force it. There are 10 to the 80 different possible values. And if you would try them all, it would take you billions and billions of years. To put it in perspective, it's almost the same number as the number of atoms in the universe. So if you say today to a quantum computer, hey, try to guess my private key, you're actually telling him, I have an atom in my head somewhere in another galaxy, and you have to try to guess which one it is. And that is completely unfathomable for the human brain to even think about such a range. But that's exactly how strong a private key is in theory, of course, because in practice, it's difficult to make such a key. But so that basically means you cannot brute force my private key if you do not know it. But if you look over my shoulder, you don't have to. You just have to find it. And that's how hackers do it today. So if we talk about cryptocurrency exchanges, for example, it's one of the it's a really bad way to own your crypto. Why? Because you would get a password to the platform. They give you a bunch of addresses, but the private keys are never even shared with you. So you never actually own a single cryptocurrency when you are holding them on an exchange. They have all the private keys. So that's also why you see so many exit scams. They can because they have the private keys. And if they don't do it, the hackers beat them to it and they steal them. So in the end of the day, it's a very, very risky place to put your crypto. And let's say software wallets, where like an app or a browser extension, is more or less in the same field, because the let's say the toolbox of hackers are endless to steal anything that ever touches the online realm. And that's also why hardware wallets came to existence. And so the idea is that you create your key offline and you keep them there and you sign transactions in a way that your private keys are not exposed. And again, that's how it works in theory. But all of these existing wallets are more like semi-cold wallets. So at some point, there is an exposure of your key online, or there is a risk. So if you think about the latest hardware wallets, use either USB or they use Bluetooth. But I don't know if you've ever heard about the Stuxnet virus, which is like a very impressive virus that let's say went from USB driver to USB driver simply by being plugged into a computer, and it never did anything until the moment it arrived in the offline setting of the Iranian nuclear power plants, where they were actually enriching. They were doing nuclear enrichment, and there the virus suddenly turned on in a fully offline setting, and it started messing with around 20% of the whole Iranian nuclear enrichment program. So that's how powerful a USB can be as an attack vector. So therefore, what we said is, offline is the only way that you can ever protect your keys. The moment you make even the tiniest connection, the security is compromised. So we have built a solution, we call it the Zero. It has 0 in remote attack vectors because it has no need to connect over USB or over Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or any kind of network connection to make your keys, to make transactions, to interact with the blockchain. Your private keys are never exposed. And obviously that's so powerful that you have actually an offline wall that is never breached, and nobody can ever attack your solution because of that. And that's when it becomes truly cold, right? And so we named we call it sometimes the coldest wallet, the NGRAVE Zero, because this is as cold as it gets. Nobody can attack it. And then the second question becomes, how can what happens if somebody finds my wallet? So we made it tamper-proof against physical attacks. And eventually we also said, why not? We are now already doing it so extreme. Let's certify this device. And we actually have the only certification in the whole blockchain space for EAL7. So there is no other company that has EAL7. It's the highest security certification, and we have it for the whole secure operating system. Ledger, for example, for the Nano X, they have a secure element. So one component that is certified EAL5+, and we have 7 for the whole overarching secure firmware. So that's basically how serious we are about your security.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, it's crazy because like you've heard of so many different, like whether it was an exit scam on an exchange or I think BitMEX just went down a couple of weeks ago as well. One of the crazier attacks or scams that I heard of, I think it was about a year ago or so with Nano, where people were purchasing them, doing the scratch off and getting the actual private keys and then putting on like that silver metallic type scratch off thing on it. So when they would resell it, people would purchase it thinking that it was a legitimate Nano ledger, which the hardware was, but the third party actually already had the private keys. So when people went to store their Bitcoin and crypto on it, they would just recover that private keys and just steal all the money off there. So it sounds like you guys completely eliminated any types of security breaches like that, which is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So something like that, they call it either like middleman attacks or supply chain attacks. So even before it reaches you as a customer, it might have been tampered with. Somebody has pre-installed, let's say, their address, and you're sending your money to them. And what we did is we built this device from the ground up, so basically from scratch, and even the electronic circuitry board and all. And we said we have to also tamper-proof it against all of these things. So we have actually invented sort of a cumulative anti-tamper framework where each level adds another layer of security. And amongst the last layers, you really have responsiveness, which is that the device detects it's under attack, it will simply wipe the keys.
Damn. It's like inception of security for like your crypto, which is cool, really cool. So Cody, what are you thinking here, man?
I think it's cool that you have the biometric data, you have the one-way QR communication, and you also have really great advisors. You have Michael Turpin, who's just a serial entrepreneur and has been in the space for a long time. And I mean, you just kind of have the whole package here. So it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to testing out the product whenever I can.
Yeah, I think for us, also like Jean-Jacques Wisquater, who is one of our security advisors. I don't know if you've seen him. He's the #2 reference in the Bitcoin paper. We've known him for 2 years, something like that. And so he basically started doing cryptography over 50 years ago. And he's the father of zero knowledge proofs. I don't know if you know it. It's like a niche in cryptography. Eventually, he was referenced to by Satoshi himself to a couple of his papers, because he was already doing blockchain in the late 80s and the beginning of the 90s. Did the first practical blockchain application in 1996. He happens to be Belgian, but it also was an eye-opener for us when we talked to him about our solution, about our vision of these hardware wallets, and also about the key generation process, because that's the moment he said, fuck, this is exactly, well, I don't know if he said fuck, but at least he said, this is exactly how I would trust the key, otherwise I would never trust it. And at some point he was so enthusiastic about our project, and you can also see him in videos talking about us, but that he said, I'm going to join the team. And so right now he's basically part of NGRAVE.
That's so cool, man. Good for you guys.
Yeah, and so you just made mention that you guys are located in Brussels itself. I'm curious to hear about what the environment is over there, since Cody and I are both located out of New York.
Yep. Well, so we were in New York like November last year, 2019, for like 5 weeks. Sort of a program where we could really figure out how we wanted to approach the American market, which is a huge market, and it's also an interesting market in terms of crypto. And we really noticed that there was a huge contrast between New York and Belgium. And basically, in the time that we were there, in the 5 weeks, we met so many interesting people in the crypto space, whereas in Belgium, you really have to look under a stone to maybe find one. And when we went back to Belgium, every time it's sort of a hangover we get, like, wow, now it takes so much longer to build traction. And it's also a bit in the legislation here that if there is anything a bit innovative in fintech, that it's quite difficult to take off. Because I built like one of the first automated investment platforms in Belgium, and then one of the big banks asked me to help them in building the new business units around automated investment algorithms. And it's completely nuts. Belgium has the most severe and strict regulator when it comes to that. I hope they don't hear me too much, but but it's also difficult in terms of innovation, and especially even just like, let's say, the newspapers, because what we have done is we wanted to put Belgium on the map, right? So we said, okay, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna involve as many Belgian partners as long as they are top class and world class, and there are many really good companies here. But to really get, let's say, papers writing about you, like now let's say now we are live in 5 days on Indiegogo. We have crushed our goal with 5 times already in 5 days, and still there is nobody writing about us. So yeah, it's like Cointelegraph, they wrote about us a couple of times lately, but if we talk about the Belgian, it's hard, and we already have such a hard niche that I would never recommend you starting something in this space, because it's hardware. Everybody calls it hard. It is hard. We built a security solution which makes it like astronomically harder on top of that. Then we do it in the crypto space where everybody thinks whatever you're building is a scam, and and eventually we have to be so well. We have to look for funding. We have to be very. It's a true entrepreneurial challenge, and I will be probably happy in some time from now, but it can be an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
imagine, but it sounds like you've been down this roller coaster before. So hopefully you're able to take some of those lessons you've learned in prior ventures and just apply them here and make the ride a little bit smoother.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I love NGRAVE. The fact that we made it already this far, it really shows how strong our team is and how dedicated we are to doing this, because you need to be on this thing 24/7. So we basically still jump out of bed every day to make sure your cryptos will be secure in the very near future.
That's what's up, man.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
So what's the next steps, right? So you have the Indiegogo going right now. You guys absolutely crushed it. So it sounds like you're going to secure the funding that you need. Where do you guys go from here?
Yeah, so we really tried to keep dilution at bay as much as we could. So until now, we didn't really do a big round. We have, like, say, IMEC, which is that world-leading nanotech leader. They invested in us in the very beginning, but most of the company is still between the three of us. We really went to, let's say, a very broad kind of fintech, sorry, like a fin mix in terms of funding. So we have the European Commission has backed us, the Web3 Foundation has backed us, the Flemish government, so the Belgian government has backed us, regardless of what I said before. So at least they're still doing things. But so far we haven't done a real big equity round, and we did that on purpose because now we're having our first sales, let's say, and that traction is necessary to grant for a specific higher valuation, right? So how we see it now is we are doing this campaign. This will give us some funding to build the first batch, so we don't have to get any outside money for that. We also have a sort of a crowd lending campaign ready for after the summer in Belgium, purely in Belgium. And I don't think we're going to raise a huge amount. It's also not the intention, but for us, it's really important that after the campaign, we start really working on the capital round. So we want to do a VC round in the second half of 2020. Yeah. So that's more or less what we're looking at. And also we will be shipping as of October worldwide.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. With the VC round that you want to do later in the later half of this year, do you anticipate any types of issues with the economic environment right now?
That's a good question. It depends a bit, because eventually it always depends on how they manage their money and how you manage your money. It's like Warren Buffett. He took almost he really went into cash in the last year, and for him it came probably as a godsend that he could start investing it when everything was crashing. I kind of did the same thing myself personally, like cashed out and then cashed in again with the few dollars I have left. But I think for VCs, well, so what we did is just before the launch, a good friend of mine who's an entrepreneur told me, hey, there is this amazing program. It's called Accelerator Frankfurt in Germany. And they said because of COVID, we're going to do, and Kosik is a partner of us. So because of COVID, we are going to do an online event. Normally it's a 3-month event, you know, like in the US, you have Techstars and so on. And I said, okay, I'm going to have a call with him. And he said, all right, you're in. And only afterwards, I knew that 800 companies applied, and that's in some strange way. After that call, he was convinced by us, and he basically put us in the batch as number 5 of the 5 companies. And the program, it's called Accelerator Frankfurt. It's more like a venture accelerator. So that means that they have a lot of investors tuning in. So we were basically doing real-time and live streams on Twitch and on YouTube, where people could see us interact with investors. And eventually we also got some funding from that, even though we weren't looking for funding. And also, I would say a lot of traction towards a potential round that will take place in the next part of the year. So we have that. And yeah, indeed, I have actually not a really good grasp on that right now. I do know that there are some funds you would really like to work with, because like we said, we try to work with the best. So you always have a couple of very, very good funds, and hopefully they find us on their radar, and they are not too scared to invest in such a crazy endeavor as, as what we're doing. It's a risky play maybe, but if you look at how well we deliver our milestones, which is in the end of the day what investors look at, I think we can definitely do something interesting by the end of the year or maybe the beginning of 2021.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
And
that's cool.
I think when they look at your product and you hitting your milestones and everything like that, that's going to give them the confidence that even though it is a quote unquote riskier venture, you guys have the right team behind it to actually deliver through. So I'm excited to see you guys start shipping out in October and what the future looks like from you. Cody, I don't have any more questions, man. Do you have anything else?
I don't either. I think it's a cool product. It's user friendly. I think it's going to be a hit.
Well, I would be very happy if you if you indeed purchase like a couple of these on our Indiegogo, because it's still the first sales for us, and it's still, you know, our product is a bit more expensive as the other ones, and that is let's say that is warranted because of several different reasons. But for most people, they don't know us yet, right? So for them, it's difficult to still make the trade-off of, this is a new company, okay, they have so much better stuff, but will they deliver, and so on. So therefore, you get 42% off today on the Indiegogo campaign. But at the same time, people will have to need several touch points with us to see like, okay, this is a cool brand, this is a cool team, they're doing everything they can to actually protect us to a level that we've never seen before. So we call it ourselves, start truly owning what is yours, because for the first time, it's not a bank who has your money, and a bank can at any point say the $100,000 you had here, we've never seen it. It's the same thing with exchanges, and hardware wallets come really close. But again, even in the beginning of the key generation process, there are residual risks that make it so that it cannot be fully under your control. And that's what we bring into the market, and it's something new. And I highly recommend to have a video at our campaign, video, and I hope it will inspire you, because also there the motto is start truly owning what is yours. And if there's anything I could ask from this interview, it's have a look for yourself, lean back, relax, watch the video, and if you like it, maybe scroll through the page and think about your security in the next 5 years.
For sure. So where can our audience go to learn about the Indiegogo campaign and just learn about NGRAVE as a whole?
Yep. Well, the easiest way is just to go to ngrave.io, and from there on, you will easily be redirected to the campaign. I think that's the easiest you can do. Yeah, and if you would enter NGRAVE in any of the social media channels, you'll find us as well. On YouTube, you will also directly find some interesting videos, because we are also explaining things ourselves to make it very easy for the end user, because it's a complex topic, which we try to make it so simple. But for the end user, it's basically just swiping and selecting, and that's it. And doing QR code transactions, which everybody already knows how to do.
Yeah, for sure. Ruben, this was awesome. I'm really excited to have learned more about NGRAVE, to meet you personally and just hear about what inspired you to build it, and, you know, all the details that you put into this solution here. So I'm sure as our audience learns more about it, they're going to fall in love just like we did, and the rest of the crypto community. You guys are really stepping up here. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. It was an honor.
Of course.
Awesome.
So, all right, man. Best of luck with everything. We'll keep in touch, and yeah, we'll take it from there.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thanks.